gifts are tax deductible. There is a misperception by many that the cause of the loss of the beach is due to the almost high water level, record high water levels in Lake Michigan. Though the high water level does not help, it is not the direct cause of our problem. Our problem is due to the loss of sand caused by the breakwater. I cannot emphasize enough that high water is not the cause of the problem. The record high water levels in Lake Michigan were in 1986. As you can see from the slide, even with the record high water, there was a beach at the pump house and alongside the shoreline in 1986. The Corps at that time was still providing beach nourishment. In 1981, they placed a record 300,000 cubic yards of sand on the beaches south of the harbor. That was over 20,000 truckloads of sand. In 1985, the Corps placed 157,000 cubic yards of sand. The last time the Corps trucked in sand from an inland source was 1995. Without the sand, the beaches have vanished. In October of last year, we applied for the $15 million GLIFR, Great Lakes Fishery and Ecosystem Restoration Grant, to build offshore breakwaters that would increase fish habitat. Their vote came back as needing additional information before deciding. Our grant application received this vote because the technique we are proposing has never been done on the Great Lakes. They felt it would be much more appropriate to make the project a research project. The GLIFR board felt that they would like to have a better understanding of what designs and configuration of structures would be optimal for fish habitat. The GLIFR board was very intrigued by the idea of creating offshore fish habitat as a way to solve issues along the shoreline, such as erosion. As a path forward, the Corps Detroit office has been directed by GLIFR board to develop 2 research proposals to submit to the EPA, who manages the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative. One proposal is to do a sediment transport study to determine the amount of sediment lost to deep water. The second proposal is to test different reef configurations to simulate natural conditions. So far, they are focused on studying the effectiveness of different underwater reef configurations and their effectiveness at different depths. The project is 100% funded by the Corps. I am pleased to announce that $225,000 has been allocated in this year's budget by the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative for this study. In fall, in spring, Major General Mark Toy, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, who was the commander of the Great Lakes and Ohio River Division, along with Jim Luke, outreach coordinator of the Detroit Planning Commission, met with Lieutenant Greg Turner and Scott Dime, also of the Corps, to inspect the New Buffalo coastline in a tour arranged and organized by County Commissioner Scott. Accompanying Major General Toy was also County Commissioner Bill Chickering, Mike Ryan from Congressman Upton's office, New Buffalo Township Supervisor Michelle Height, and Mayor Lou O'Donnell. Ed Oldis and I represent the New Buffalo Shoreline Alliance. Ari Dunkersloot, president of Dunkersloot and Sons Marine Development, was also present. A brief meeting was held at the New Buffalo City Hall to describe what Major Toy would be witnessing, underscoring the Corps' 2009 engineering study, which identifies the cause of coastline damage and the threat to the city's pump house as being the interruption of the littoral drift caused by the federal breakwater. Booklets that documented the problem, the solution, and the commitment made by the government were given to the Corps representatives. The group made 3 stops. The first was the location of the feeder beach just south of New Buffalo Harbor. This is the location the Corps was to use to regularly nourish the beaches as part of their construction agreement with the city. The Corps, however, has not provided nourishment for the last 20 years. The second was where a house once stood and 2 lots away from the low-lift pump house which sends lake water to the city's filtration plant. The plant supplies water to the city, township, and casino. It is the backup supplier to surrounding communities and a critical asset to the region. The revetment that provides the pump house was completely replaced, which protects the pump house, was completely replaced after this 1998 storm. When first constructed, it was far from the water. but today it sits on its own peninsula. His position is so precarious that the state of Michigan has written the city that it was imperative the city commence planning that will result in the relocation of that city pump house. The third stop was in the village of Grand Beach. Dr. Sloop & Sons was in the process of building a revetment to save a home from the erosion caused by the breakwater in New Buffalo. The breakwater continues to block sand and will continue to do so according to the 2009 Corps study. 1,722,000 square feet of sand, the equivalent of 35 football fields, has been deposited north of the harbor. Major General Toy, at the conclusion of his visit, was asked to fix the problem. He said he and his staff had some homework, but it was his intention to resolve this problem. In a follow-up visit to Major General Toy's December visit, Michelle Height wrote a 4-page letter addressing some of Major General Toy's concerns. Support letters were also sent by Commissioner Scott in the city of New Buffalo. Major General Toy had 2 concerns at the conclusion of his visit. One was what authority did the Corps have to provide beach nourishment, and for what period of time? The second was providing protection to private property. Michelle addressed Major Toy's 2 concerns with 23 references and well over 250 pages of support documents. These references showed the Corps made commitment to provide beach nourishment until the beaches south of Little Harbor stabilized. These references also show that the Corps has protected private property in New Buffalo and will spend $650 million this year protecting other private property. The NDSA helped with much of the research for this effort. The NDSA has applied for a Michigan Department of Natural Resources Michigan Coastal Zone Program Grant. The Michigan CZM grant provides grant funds to assist in the development of vibrant and resilient coastal communities through the protection and restoration of our sensitive coastal resources and biologically diverse ecosystems. The NDSA is pleased to announce that we partnered with Michigan State University, and they will be our grant administrator. The CZM grant is a 1-to-1 match, and the NDSA must match the state's contribution, which would be approximately $75,000. We have recognized the need for more horsepower in Washington, so we hired a governmental affairs firm. We chose O'Connell and Dempsey because they have worked with the Army Corps of Engineers, the Assistant Secretary of the Army, the decision makers at the Department of the Interior, the Environmental Protection Agency, as well as key leaders in the executive branch and the administration. They have experience working with federal agencies during project management process and work closely with Congress. They are also working with relative committees for water resources and environmental issues, including the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, the House Natural Resources Committee, the Senate Environment and Public Works Committee, the Senate Energy Resource Committee, and the House and Senate Appropriation Committees. An important element of their service is regular Washington visits and their ability to connect us with our congressional delegation and the Washington decision makers to make the case for your needs. They have assisted us with our successful Section 111 application and are working closely with us on the Section 216 application that was recently filed. Their knowledge and know-how are very valuable to this alliance. U.S. Congressman Fred Upton and County Commissioner Ezra Scott announced last fall that the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers will allocate more funds for recreational harbor dredging in southwest Michigan. The St. Joseph Republican said the Corps released its updated fiscal 2018 work plan, which includes dredging for New Buffalo, South Haven, and Saugatuck. Upton said he asked R.D. James, Assistant Secretary of the Army, to include critical operation and maintenance funding for the dredging of these Pacific harbors this year. New Buffalo did get $275,000. Upton said, dredging is critical to tourism, recreation, economic activity, and jobs, and we need to dig deep to protect what is the lifeblood of southwest Michigan. Upton said in a news release, these recreational harbors typically do not receive federal funding, so this is a major win for our region. The work was completed this past spring. An NDSA board member attended the State of Michigan-sponsored Shoreline and Shallows Impact of Waves and Lake Levels on Shorelines Conference at the Michigan State University in March. New designs and technology for high-energy systems introduced at that all-day conference are being investigated by the NDSA for adaptability. The new technology is interesting enough that the NDSA is paying for computer modeling to see if this new technology would work on our shoreline and build beaches. We also held a meeting in Detroit, which was attended by 8 members of the Corps, along with those from the Cincinnati office via conference call. The NDSA flew in our Washington, D.C. affairs firm to prepare the agenda and lead the meeting. We also brought in our consulting engineering firm, Edgewater Resources, and expanded the NDSA attendees to include a board member with degrees in fluid dynamics. County Commissioner Ezra Scott and New Buffalo Township Supervisor Michelle Hyde attended the meeting, and New Buffalo Mayor Lou O'Donnell participated by conference call. We are pleased to report that in this 2-hour meeting, common ground was found, and the NDSA and the Corps will be partnering in the next phase. We've moved off the page of "It's not my fault" to the page "Let's see if we can find a solution." The NDSA is working with the Corps to increase the amount of dredging material placed on our coastline. In the Corps' work package for 2020, they have proposed dredging 60,000 cubic yards and placing this material south of the harbor. Dredging is part of the NDSA short-term solution. This is an important step as the Corps, excluding this year, has not paid for dredging in New Buffalo in over 10 years. All dredging costs have been paid for locally. Before long-term solutions can be implemented, the Corps has to do more studies. This is very frustrating for us. We believe that there's been enough studies to show the loss of beach that has been caused by the New Buffalo breakwater. Unfortunately, the Corps must have a study that investigates that directly. So part of the short-term solution is to have the Corps perform a Section 216 study. Under this study, the Corps would pursue funding for an initial assessment to review the New Buffalo Harbor to determine if, due to significantly changed physical or economic conditions, it would be advisable to modify the structure or operation and to improve the quality of the environment and the overall interest of the public. The New Buffalo City Council voted to submit a letter of intent to seek funds to do a 216 assessment under the operation and maintenance funds in the Corps' 2020 work plan. I'm going to go back to 24. I need a page of the link. Yeah, right there. U.S. Congressman Fred Upton testified at a subcommittee on energy and water development appropriations hearing and expressed his strong support for funding the Army Corps of Engineers navigation and operation activities, which in particular provide funding for Section 216 of the Rivers and Harbors Act of 1970. The New Buffalo Harbor is a project that is eligible to compete for Section 216 funding. Under this authority of 216, the Army Corps of Engineers would need to determine if it would be advisable to modify the structure or operations because of significantly changed physical, economic, or environmental conditions.
And as I have you, I would also urge that we have strong funding for the Army Corps of Engineers navigation, maintenance, and operation activities. Again, in the Great Lakes, we have a good number of commercial and recreational harbors. But in particular, I would note funds for Section 216 of the Rivers and Harbors Act of 1970, which enables the Corps to review operations of completed projects The physical, economic, or environmental conditions are found, a report is made to Congress on advisability for modifying the structure or operations. I have one small community, the city of New Buffalo, which is just north of the state line, Mr. Visklowski's district, where we've had severe erosion. It's damaged private property, could potentially threaten the water supply as the pump house is located in the area being eroded. This is a project that is eligible to compete for Section 216 funding, but obviously we have to have adequate resources there. And I would urge you to continue to work on a bipartisan basis so that we members not on the subcommittee and appropriately can continue to support your good efforts.
Thank you so very much. As you know, both the ranking member and myself are uncomfortable, I think it's fair to say that, with the administration slashing the core accounts, the investigations accounts, so many of the accounts that we have a responsibility to care for the nation through passage of this bill. So we are very grateful for your testimony today. If Congressman Simpson has any questions or comments he wishes to make at this point.
I appreciate both of you being here. Obviously, we agree on Yucca Mountain. We've taken, I don't know, gazillion votes on the floor since I've been here on Yucca Mountain, and as you said, it always gets 300 or so votes. It's bipartisan. Politics has stopped us from solving this problem. And we need to just move on and get it done. So I agree with what you said, Jim. Is Redwood Falls in your district?
No, it's not.
I was just wondering because I had my legislative director here, and then my staff director out in the district his father was from Redwood Falls, and on the city council, that's where he's from, and he brought a lot of Minnesotan to our.
It's like 30 miles north of where our district is.
Yeah. Anyway, I agree with you that the president's budget is always a little bit concerning, is they never spend down the Inland Waterway Trust Fund, the anticipated revenue. This year, I think it's around half of what we anticipate in revenue. If you're going to tax somebody for a purpose and for a need, and you still have that need, why not spend that money on that need? But yet, it makes it easier for them to put together a budget where they slash the heck out of the Army Corps of Engineers and stuff. So that's something that the chairwoman and I are concerned about, obviously, with the president's request on the Army Corps. I don't suspect it's going to stay where it is. We need to continue having this fight and this argument. I was going to ask you a question, but I'll wait for Congressman Shimkus' testimony, because he's the author of the legislation that we passed last year in the House. So anyway, thank you all for being here.
Congressman Fleischman, do you have any questions?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I too will be waiting for Mr. Shimkus' testimony, but Congressman Upton and Hagedorn, thank you so much. Yucca, to reiterate these sentiments, needs to be done. It's been funded, it's been largely constructed, it's ready to go, and the American people need this done. We're going to have a nuclear renaissance in this country, and we need that final repository, but kudos do go to my dear friend from Illinois, Mr. Shimkus, on the authorizing side. He's been the hero of this since I've been in Congress, and as an appropriator, to you gentlemen, I give you my word that we're going to continue to do everything to get this funded. Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I might just again compliment Mr. Shimkus for a moment. It does appear that we are on the cusp of actually getting something through. But we have to take the initiative here in the House. But it appears as though the Senate, or the members that are there, particularly Senator Alexander and McConnell, are ready to have a vote on this issue. But that's why it's important that we show our stuff here in the House, because if we're unable to do that, I'm not sure that would happen. So this is the opportunity for us to really embark on early in the year, get it done in the first year so we can get it done. This stuff off the shores of Lake Michigan and other environmentally sensitive areas and really make it move forward. Long overdue. Thank you. Yield back.
Thank you very much, and Congressman Upton.
Congressman Upton also wrote a letter to the Corps. His letter reads in part, As you work to develop the 2020 work plan for the Army Civil Works Program, I ask that you include funding for maintenance dredging and a 216 New Start General Investigation Study request for New Buffalo Harbor. In particular, I ask that you include $620,000 in the work plan for dredging of the New Buffalo Harbor, as they urgently need nourishment to be placed along the beach to help alleviate the devastating impacts of severe shoreline erosion, and $200,000 for a 216 New Start General Investigation Study request to look at the impact of the Corps' construction of New Buffalo Harbor on the shoreline. The erosion is certainly causing destruction of private property, but could also threaten the water supply for the city, the township of New Buffalo, and the casino, due to the pump house located in an area being eroded. Further, the pump house also supplies the properties owned and operated by the Pokagon Fund, with approximately 400,000 gallons of water per day. The loss of water supply would be devastating not only to homeowners, but also to visitors who spend over $400 million in Berrien County in the year 2017. I once again urge the Corps to provide the necessary funds in the 2020 work plan for maintenance dredging and a 216 New Start General Investigation Study request to address the shoreline erosion issues in New Buffalo Harbor. The Corps recommended the city survey the pump house for Vetment every couple of years after visiting the site following the Halloween storm of 2014. The city had this done in 2016 and 2018. And as you can see from the overlay of these years, there has been movement in the rocks at the pump house. So these arrows that are pointing inland represent the new points on the 2018 survey. These represent the original survey. Pump house is located, if I can see it up from back here, right there, right here. The differences in the space are between 3 and 10 feet. So there is definitely movement in the revetment that's protecting the water supply. Knowing that the rock had moved above the surface, the NDSA was interested in seeing what was happening to the rocks below the surface. The NDSA has paid to have the revetment below the water surveyed to determine if there was also movement. This was done to see if conditions have changed. Any changes could be used to accelerate the 216 study. The pump house supplies water to the city, township, and casino, and is backup to surrounding communities. It would be catastrophic to this region if there was a loss.
Go back.
No.
So go to this one.
28.
No, it's not.
It's a slide called Scattered Toestone.
We don't have it. Yeah.
Well, then we'll move without it. It should have been there. Indeed, the toe stones, which anchor the revetment, have moved. Even more concerning is that displacement is at the location where the raw water pipe from the crib enters the pump house. The survey also shows that the lake bed is completely starved of sand. NDSA also wished to see a Section 111 study done. Section 111 study calls for the Corps to develop and construct projects for the purpose of mitigation of the shoreline erosion or other problems directly influenced by the construction of a federal navigation project. Each project is limited to $10 million. The Village of Grand Beach wrote a letter of intent for a Section 111 study. Section 111 projects have two phases: the feasibility phase, again, the study, and the design and implementation phase. The first $100,000 in the feasibility phase costs are financed 100% by the federal government. The NDSA is pleased to report that these monies have been approved for a feasibility study, phase 1. The NDSA Governmental Affairs consultants have worked with our Michigan elected officials' offices in Washington to to support the funding. The NDSA thanks our delegates for their continued support. The NDSA was invited to participate in a roundtable with local leaders and community members with Lieutenant Governor Gilchrist and his team on April 22nd. 3 city council members, along with Lou O'Donnell, Michelle Height, Ezra Scott, the city manager, and myself were present, along with business owners and members of the community. During the Q&A, Michelle Height, Ezra Scott, and I were able to center the discussion on erosion issues and the potential water problem for the city, township, and casino. After the meeting, Lieutenant Governor proceeded to the pump house for a first-hand look at our problem. We spent about 45 minutes on-site answering many questions that he asked. He assured us that this would become a topic in Lansing. County Commissioner Scott attended the IJC, the International Joint Commission Conference in Milwaukee. The IJC is the only current body that can address the overall Great Lakes water levels. Commissioner Scott talked about the negative effects of high water and asked that the IJC address this problem. The NDSA recently defined our problem in a meeting hosted by New Buffalo Township Supervisor Michelle Height for State Senator Kimberly Lasada and State Representative Brad Paquette. Also in attendance were Mike Ryan from Fred Upton's office, County Commissioner Ezra Scott, and Mayor Lou O'Donnell. After an hour-long meeting and presentation, the group took a boat ride to witness the problem firsthand. The NDSA is pleased to report that in a follow-up email, the Senator's District Director said she has made this one of her top priorities. As you well know, the issue is at a critical juncture. She has had several positive meetings with Eagle since our August 16th meeting and tour. The state is finally engaged. The NDSA is planning a trip to Washington to meet with our congressmen, our 2 senators, and key decision makers in the administration. We will be asking our local elected officials to join us. We also have requested a meeting with the governor of Michigan, since Michigan has more coastline than any other state but Alaska. Unlike most coastal states, Michigan does not have a beach nourishment program. The NDSA believes that as a stakeholder, the state should be doing something, and when we have ideas on how this can be funded and achieved. To date, the governor has declined a meeting with us, so we are pushing other avenues to persuade her to come to the table. A recap of our successes in 2019. $275,000 in dredging was done this year, paid for by the federal government. Those dredgings were placed on the feeder beach. $225,000 from the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative for funding the Glypher project to design offshore breakwaters to increase fish habitat and also solve shoreline erosion. $625,000 in dredging funds for New Buffalo is in the 2020 work plans submitted by the Corps. $200,000 for a 216 study is also in the work plan for 2020. $50,000 in funds has been released to the Corps for the first phase of the Section 111 study. We are the only organization working to restore the beaches south of the harbor, and we believe we are the only ones that have demonstrated any success. Again, I want to thank you for being here today. And here comes the hard part. To continue the success of the Alliance, it's going to need money. To start the organization, $15,000 was contributed by affected homeowners associations and individuals. This year's cumulative contributions from board members has increased from $14,500 to over $24,000. If successful on the CZM grant, we will need to match the $75,000 that will be given to us. Without your help, we would not be here today. To continue our work, we need to ask you again for help. Ideally, we'd like to ask each of our members for a contribution of $1,000. If you can't do this, any amount will help us to continue our work. It will cost anywhere between $100,000 and $200,000 this year to keep these efforts moving. So we have an easier way to donate this year to the NBSA. If you just go to our website, the address was on the button that you were given when you arrived, and you click on Donate Now, you'll be prompted through. A screen pops up, Again, donate now and follow the promise. If you choose to not use the electronic method, we have forms that are going to be given out to do mail contributions. So the money that we have, the more money we have, the more work we can get done, and the less often we have to come back to you and ask the interested group for additional monies. It's not easy to ask for money, but we think this is a good investment for our community, and therefore it's necessary. The board members do not take any form of salary from the Alliance. All time is donated. We ask, why should the whole community be concerned about Summit's Beach? I repeat, the problem is caused by a public structure, the harbor jetty. And more importantly, without beaches, what would our local economies, our local communities, and our property values look like? The beaches drive property values, which generate tax revenues for public services. They drive tourism. This is a public problem. It touches every aspect of our lives. Any money spent to protect our beaches is an investment in our homes, our schools, our communities, our economies, and our future. I thank you for your attention. I open up the floor to questions, but one thing before that, if I could have a show of hands by community and by HOAs, I'd appreciate it. Dunewood, Sunset Shores, Warwick Shores, Forest Beach Estates, I put my teeth back in my mouth. Forest Beach Villas, Grand Beach. Thank you.
Grand Beach, all right.
We have a mic. Anybody with questions would like to come up, or we'll pass it back to you. I think I see it in the lights in my eyes. Questions?
I got a question. It seemed like General Toy was very sympathetic, or seemingly, to our cause. With him retiring, is that a big setback?
No, the new general that was appointed, Bob Whittle, quite honestly, is more emphatic about getting the problem done than Toy was, and I quite frankly couldn't believe that, because I thought Toy was really, really on our side. This guy wants action taken, he wants to take it fast, and it appears that he's getting it done, because these 111 projects usually take 6 months to a year. Excuse me, take 6 months to a year just to get the study done. They've already gotten the money and began the study, according to the Corps, this late August.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Can you give us a timeline of what we would expect? Everything happens the way we want it to. When would we see some sort of estimated visual effect, practical effect?
Hey, can you pass the mic back there?
Oh, sure.
Timeline on the project.
When do you presume that we will see something from all of this work? When do you expect we'll get our beaches back, or access to the lake?
Well, if everything went perfect, it would be between 2 and 5 years. My guess, 3 to 7. That would be when the project would be 100% completed. Studies are going to take, unfortunately, they're going to take a year. I mean, I said I'm going to tell you how quickly, but it's going to take a year.
Another question, so what I understood is that there'll be 3 times as much sand put in, or 600,000 this year for 2020 into dredging and then replacement, which is 1 or 3 times as much as what we had this year, is that correct?
It'd be 60,000 yards of sand, $625,000 has been allocated to
And what was put in this past year?
15.
So we're still going up for the next year?
Yes.
To 60,000, okay, thank you.
Yes. Michiana right now is not. The question is whether Michiana Shores is participating in this process, and the answer is no. We approached Michiana. To the best of my knowledge, I was told that through a vote, the majority of people did not want to participate. There was no funding coming from Michiana, so the decision was made to move on without it.
I got a question. So you had mentioned, yeah, you had mentioned that the high water, is part of the problem, but not the problem. I understand the International Joint Committee is kind of the sole department that can actually change the level of the water or reduce it or look at opening up the locks to help reduce the high water. Is that true, first of all? And second of all, what is happening with the IGC in regards to looking at different ways to reduce the high water level?
It's true that the IJC controls water levels. I'm probably going to get myself in trouble for this, but I'm going to say it anyway.
Ezra, I think is going to question.
Ezra is going to follow through, but the bottom line is there's not very many places for the water to go. When we're done, Ezra has a full presentation on it, so I think that may answer some of your questions.
All right, but in the 70s, I believe, so in the 70s when we had our issue, I believe that we did open up the locks. I think they're the St. Sue Marie locks at that time. I think that relieved a lot of the water, the height of the water. I'm not positive on that. I'm not going to say that that's what exactly happened, but that's what I thought was that happened. And we introduced some fishery into Lake Michigan due to that. So I'm pretty sure it did happen, but I'd like to understand that, if in fact that was something that helped relieve some of the erosion issues. Because I got to believe the high water level does have something to do with it.
Yeah, I'd like to talk to you after this meeting.
Sure.
For the Great Lakes Coalition.
Okay.
You guys a couple times, and I'll explain to you what happened, that it's not sustainable.
Okay, but it was the locks that were open, is that correct?
Lake Superior, dumps into Lake Michigan, you're on through the same area. Why do we control the water?
Here you.
Yeah, that would be, we want to hear it too.
Yeah, I'm a member of the Great Lakes Coalition as well. That's up in Saugatuck. Primary purpose of the Great Lakes Coalition is to control the levels of water on Lake Michigan, protect the shorelines. I don't know how much Ezra's going to tell you about it, but there's some great papers on this. It's, as Ted said, it's very complicated. The Great Lakes Basin drains Lake Superior through Michigan and Huron, St. Clair River, St. Clair Lake, Detroit River into Lake Erie into Ontario, into St. Lawrence Seaway. All along that path, there's flooding. Lake Michigan is the lowest of the Great Lakes relative right now. So you can imagine what's happening in Lake Erie, Lake Ontario. There's big cities in Canada that are impacted as well. So it's not a simple solution. The IJC can do things. For instance, they just increased the flow at the Niagara flow out of Lake Erie. So Erie went down, Ontario goes up. The real solution is try to figure out how to get more water going out of Lake Ontario into the St. Lawrence Seaway, the St. Lawrence River without flooding those coastal areas. Very complex problem, not easy to solve, but they could do a better job. I think what you're referring to is back 70s, 80s, there was a problem with damming and the amount of depth of the St. Clair River. So they dredged that. They also put gates there to knock out some of the ice that was blocking the flow. But what happens today, Lake Superior dumps water into Lake Michigan and Huron through the St. Mary's River. That flow has been under a lot of question because they've been going at a higher rate than they're supposed to. But at any rate, there's, I can send you some information on this. We're about to write a letter to the Great Lakes, from the Great Lakes Coalition to the IJC that asks them to look at some of the areas that they might be able to work on to reduce the water levels. In my opinion, the best they can do is control the variance better. Lake Michigan, 6 feet, right? 2013, we were 6 feet lower than we are today. If we could get that ±3 to ±2, we'd be in a lot better shape. I'm sure you'll learn more from Ezra.
This may be a naive question, but has there been any investigation of the jetty itself? Could it be modified? Could it be made a non-continuous structure to allow the flow of water and sand through it and still be an effective jetty for the harbor?
General. 7-8?
Yeah. That's who I spoke to. I'll talk about it.
So the Army Corps, the General Toy's replacement, first comment was tear the thing out and rebuild it. So they are looking at options.
That's a 216, Scotty.
As part of what the 216 studies do. What are the options? Anything else?
Yeah, with all due respect to all the voters, just maybe a naive question. The dredging is for the excess of the harbor, is it not? That's the dredging. The reason there's dredging that goes on.
The dredging goes on because of the accumulation of sand, yes.
Right, but for the excess of the harbor.
Correct.
So it seems to me, and again, I'm naive, but like we're the stepchild here. I mean, if that gets addressed every year or 2 years for the boating population, and there's funds for that, and I understand you have to have an operational harbor. Why is that all of a sudden such a big issue every 2 or 3 years to get that clear when we're fighting this continuously just to get the remnants of the dredging?
Well, the real problem lies in that 20 years ago, they stopped dredging. And if they wouldn't have stopped dredging, we wouldn't have the severe problem that we have today. So now we're playing catch up, and there's only a certain amount of sand that gets deposited there every year. If you look north of the harbor, you have an unbelievable amount of sand there. If you just stand where the bluff line stood originally, which I did yesterday, and you look to the north and to the south, the accumulation of sand in the north is huge. And somehow, we got to get the natural flow of the sand back to the lake, rather than...
No, I understand that, and again, I'm not here to argue that point. I'm just trying to get informed that if that's a continual problem because the harbor has to be open for business, where are the big picture if they're doing that? Again, it seems like we're the stepchild in that. But again, I'm naive, just a thought. And I understand what you're saying about the migration of lateral flow of the sand. But if it's dredged every year or 2 years for the boating entity, we're kind of the stepchild after that, as opposed to being maybe in front of that, in conjunction with that.
Let me, if I can, the amount of dredging that is traditionally done, the amount of sand that comes from the dredging is not enough to sustain our beaches. And the dredging is paid locally. So this is kind of a big deal. Yeah, so the federal government hasn't paid for recreational dredging for over 10 years. It's all been done locally. So one of the big things is we got federal money this year, thanks to Ezra and Upton, and we're going to get hopefully a lot of dredging next year. The Corps put in $600,000 in their budget to pay for dredging in the Buffalo.
I think you might off the river. The sediment of the river, just like you dredge to the channel. The real dredging would be is the sand that's being washed by our. That's the point we should make. That's the sand that we lost. And if you ever go to Google Earth, you can see it going out in the sand. Right.
Anybody else?
Quick question in the back here.
Just so you know, I'm a member of the Harbor Commission. We are funded solely by the voters in the community to do the dredging. We can only dredge the federal channel, which is from the mouth of the harbor to the bridge. We cannot go down the river. A couple of years ago, when the river was dredged for the first time, that soil was contaminated and could not be used for beach restoration. Sorry. But all the sands that come from the federal channel are put back down into Sunset Shores under the original agreement with the Army Corps. Yeah, also New Buffalo just received a grant to start looking at redoing the beach and the municipal harbor. If they're looking at redoing the federal piece, will they be working with us? Has that been told to the city officials? Are they aware of it?
Let me come around. It's right here. It's okay.
I don't know if this is right to bring it up or not, but I am a homeowner and I am an owner of a boat slip on D-Dock. My boat slip is right under me in the water. It's been there for a while. We had our meeting today. And I hope people realize we have lost over 300 boaters this year because of the situation. We're trying to bring that back too, and we're spending loads of money. We had a meeting today. What we're trying to do to bring back our docks, because we're losing so many people over this thing, and I really appreciate the Alliance helping out too, and we're doing studies to see what we can do with our association to bring in. I'm not on the board, I just own a boat slip, and we had a meeting today about what we're doing, plans to see what to bring up our what we're going to do about the boat slips too. So I want everyone to be aware too that we've lost so many people and there's been rumors they're not coming back. So we really have to do something about this too to bring the people back into our area. So I really appreciate everything that's been done.
Thank you. Got your Fitbit on?
I appreciate the efforts of the Alliance very much. All the leadership of the various communities are under a lot of pressure from their constituents to come up with a solution. What would you say to them, to those communities who are thinking of pursuing their own solutions to this problem?
I think a unified group is going to do much more and have much more success than us trying to do it as fractured pieces. You know, the alliance, it's taken 4 years. I started with Ed in 14, and quite frankly, I was the eternal optimist who felt we could do this in a couple years. But we feel, and paper shows it, that we finally turned the corner. We've got governmental officials, we've got the Corps listening to us. We've got the Corps saying, you know what, maybe there's a better technology to look at the problem and get it fixed. Whereas when Ed, I, and Mike, I think Mike Miss went to South Bend for the first meeting back like November of 14, their answer to us was, not our problem, your problem. Harbor's functioning properly. I think if we stay together as a group, we can accomplish this and we can be successful. And quite frankly, you know, before I'm gone, at least we'll have some beaches. That's got to come pretty quick. I don't know if they're getting up there.
Let me answer that directly. We're the only organization that has any success at all. And it behooves this community to jump on board because so far we're the only ones that demonstrated they can get this job done and make this kind of progress. So I would suggest your organization, you and everyone else join the NBSA because I believe we're going to get this done.
Hey, I just want to echo, you guys are amazing, and everybody should donate more money, because let's get it, like you said, let's get it done. Just quickly, the St. Joe whole situation, can you do that, a real quick synopsis, that they won the decision, but it was enough money, or what the story was there?
They won the decision, they appealed the award, and from what I was told a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, the judge told both parties to go figure out a way to get it settled, but there has been no monetary number mentioned again. End of September is the new deadline.
Okay, I got you.
I'm gonna say it took 18 years.
Okay.
18 years.
I have a question regarding state and federal legislators, not just in Michigan, but Indiana, Illinois, Wisconsin, anybody that shares the Great Lakes. Is there any website that would specifically list how the legislators are voting on these lakeshore issues? Specifically, a lot of times you have your legislator and you don't know what they're voting for. And on one of the videos you showed, one of the hearings, he was indicating that they're going to take it from the House to the Senate, and they thought they had to support the Senate. But as a voter, it seems like these people are so sensitive about where their votes are coming from that if you can show large numbers of people, not just in Michigan, but throughout the Great Lakes, like Ontario, like wherever, that are concerned about this and are going to select their legislators based on how they vote. That I just didn't know if there was a site that might pinpoint that.
You know, I don't have the answer. Ezra, Mike, you know?
Let's go.
There is on the state of Michigan side, I know there hasn't been really anything kind of done on the state of Michigan side. They've been kind of quiet on this because, to be quite honest, I truly believe that they don't get paid. It's money that the state would have to put in. But on the federal side, I believe every congressman, Democrat or Republican on the Great Lakes, maybe other than Amash, has voted to continue funding for the Great Lakes, with all of the programs for the Great Lakes.
Stagnow's website says she is responsible for the Great Lakes issues. She's got a reporting to her, and according to her website, there's a bunch of names there. Right. I don't know if that was in Illinois or Indiana.
Yeah, that I don't know.
Go to Stagnow's website.
I don't know if you heard that, but Stabenow's website has a list of the Michigan delegates who are responsible for the lake.
Most of them are all yes.
I live in Warwick Shores, and we have the benefit with a condo association that communicate to all the Warwick owners the importance of donating. You guys do a fantastic job. But what I was wondering, I saw you got a nice contingency from Sunset Shores and a bunch of folks from Grand Beach. So, and that says those situations you have a lot of individual disparate owners. And I think there's My concern is that I don't know how we communicate the message to, let's say, people that don't necessarily live on the lake shore. I think some folks that live in Grand Beach by the golf course think that's the rich person's problem with the big house on the lake. But I don't think that people realize, no matter how close to the lake you live or not, the adverse impact on the property values are undeniable. And it's so important that somebody in Sunset Shores that lives on Water Street and not Shore Drive, that problem is just as big to that person. That I don't know that it's been able to be communicated in that regard. And the other thing I'm just wondering, and I don't have the answer, I'm just throwing this out. And the other aspect is, I wonder if there's anything that may sound kind of simple, but whether it's placards or signs that people that donate, you know, do it for the church carnival, you know, an NBSA member or something, you know, that gets a little buzz around these neighborhoods going, what's that all about?
One of our largest hurdles is education. Educating the people, the residents, as to the effects of the erosion. I agree with what you said. People that aren't near the water don't believe it's their problem, but what they don't realize is these beaches generate tax revenues, and the big houses on the lake, quite frankly, pay some pretty big real estate taxes, and if all that money goes away, the cost of running government isn't going to change. The cost of running government is going to stay the same or increase, and what's going to happen is the people who are off the lake are going to get higher tax bills. It's just a function of accounting, or it's a function of bankruptcy, whichever way you want to go. I mean, if the city governments decide that they don't want to increase the taxes, then they'll go broke. But look, I'm here. One of our big things is we have to educate. Education will put the group together.
Judge comes to the Sunset Shores Club every year, and he's been successful in getting donations from Sunset Shores property owners, the majority of which are not on the lake.
And we try to make every HOA meeting. You know, it's either been Ed or myself or somebody from the board is trying to make every HOA meeting to just keep the education process going.
Good morning. Just want to thank the Alliance as well for the work that you're doing. You're actually moving the ball. I appreciate that. I have a two-part question. First on funding. I think it was just referenced, but you're going on donations, but have any municipalities or HOAs along the shore actually funded the efforts as well?
We've gotten we've gotten 2 checks, I believe, from Sunset Shores, but everything else has been individual contributions.
Okay.
Let me take that back. We did get 1 check from Warwick Shores early on from the association.
Okay. Second question, the fill material or the material that's being dredged is coming out of the channel. I believe in a meeting ago, or maybe 2 meetings ago, there was some discussion about stranded sand off the beach, and I wonder if there's any efforts to actually get that sand from New Buffalo Harbor all the way down to the state line and actually pump that back up on the beach. Has that been explored, or is that in any of these discussions?
It's in the process of being explored, and just the other day, from the rep from Kim Lasada's office said that they've been working closely with Eagle, and the objections to many of our requests are being taken away. So we are making progress. The meeting with Brad Paquette and Kim Lasada last week or 2 weeks ago really opened up the state. You know, it appears right now that the state and the feds are going to work much more closely together to get this thing resolved. And that's the best place to find sand right now. If we can pump it back up and we don't have Eagle, we keep wanting to call them DEQ, they're not, Eagle. We don't have Eagle trying to stop the process, I think we'll get it accomplished.
And everybody else in the world does that. They find sand offshore, Florida, you know,
all the time.
Louisiana.
Exactly.
They find the sand, they bring it back.
As a resident of Grand Beach, my concern is that the feeder beach
gets the sand, and how long is it going to take for that sand to come down to Grand Beach? And to supplement that effort from the channel, but also offshore, is something that is appealing to me anyway.
And if you don't get that sand, it's 20 foot of water or deeper, you lost it, it'll never come back without dredging.
Ezra, you want to come up?
I'm Brian Burns, I'm from Grand Beach, and my mantra is it isn't about the lake level, it's about the loss of the sand. My wife and I have owned our house for 40 years, and about 35 years ago, a longtime member of the Grand Beach community from the Wilkie family, Martha Wilkie, came to my house, and she had these films from the 30s and 40s of Grand Beach. It was amazing. The beach was probably 300 yards wide. And the bluffs from the beach to the homes were no taller than the stage here. Okay? Today, those same bluffs are 20 or 30 feet. It's amazing when you stand back and look. It's all about the loss of the sand. Everybody, I read the articles in the newspaper, all of them, Chicago, whatever, even South Bend, and it's always about the level of the lake. The level certainly causes a problem, but the sand that's been eroded over the years is just almost incomprehensible. So I just wanted to get that message across. Thank you.
For those of you who don't know, I am Ezra Scott. I'm your county commissioner from this district. I'm a lifelong resident of New Buffalo. I have seen it go from lots and lots and lots of sand to no sand. I was contacted by the Buffalo Shoreline Alliance, and I started my project of trying to meet the correct people in order to come up with a solution. First of all, you all in here should be very proud of the board from the NBSA. I'd like to thank them for all of their hard work and diligence. You have so many people that are here. Michelle Height from the New Buffalo Township Supervisor, and especially Lou O'Donnell, the mayor of the city of New Buffalo, is actively involved, along with Congressman Upton. Although we don't see the congressman here, we do see Mike Ryan, and Mike has been instrumental in getting a lot of the information from here back to the congressman. So everybody has been doing a lot. I just wanted to put that out first. The other thing is that I got started in this 3 years ago, and I truly believed back then when Ed and I and Ted talked, this was never about high water levels, this was about where is the sand. That's what it is. Where are our beaches? Those are economic drivers for our community. It was addressed earlier about that. Just because you're not a rich person that lives on the lake, I don't know where that came from, pretty much seemed to me like all the people who live on the lake are pretty damn poor, putting in all of the rocks and everything to save their property, to save ground, which they're not making anymore. Let's be quite honest, they're not making that ground anymore. It is an economic driver, so the coffee shops in town are going to suffer. Things like that, property values. That being said, I was contacted by Ted to find out whether or not there was a possibility that I could attend the IJC conference in Milwaukee. I was able to redo some meetings and reschedule them, and I went as your representative and to the IJC. It was amazing because during the IJC, they were talking about all these projects, and it was interesting that they never mentioned the Gliffer project, us, because that's the only one, but they did mention that there's a Gliffer project that's out there, an application that has to deal with putting in artificial reefs, rock reefs, in order to establish a fish habitat. And not only would that establish a fish habitat, it would also protect the erosion. I thought, sounds like New Buffalo. But I didn't say anything because I didn't want anybody to really know that was us. I will tell you, I spoke to the new commissioners from the IJC. The IJC commissioners are from the United States and Canada. The President of the United States nominates commissioners. They are approved by the Senate. Our Canadian partners in the IJC, the Prime Minister of Canada nominates those people, approved by their parliament. So I met with some of the new ones, and this was a very odd meeting for me, because when I gave them my card, and they saw my name, they knew who I was. Now, I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it was a little discerning. And I will tell you right here, the IJC has really two main things that they're responsible for. They're responsible for water quality and the lake levels. Now, that's for our region of the IJC, which I think is Region 7. They stretch all the way from Nova Scotia to Alaska. The IJC is in charge. All they wanted to discuss was the environment. They were more worried about phytoplankton. They were worried more about fish and muskrats and ducks and beavers than they were about the lake level. So I had to explain to them that with all the high water that we've had, all of the creeks and tributaries that drain into the drains, I'm talking 10, 15, 20 miles inland, that drain into the drainage districts around the farms, that drain into the creeks, that drain into the streams, that then drain into the rivers that flow out into the lake. And I tried to explain to them that their high water, all of the soils for the farmland, the phosphates and the nitrates are not being able, the fertilizers from the farmers, are not being able to drain and permeate the soil, because they get to the high water level in the groundwater and then they sit there. So they'll seep into that drainage water, which takes itself out. And I said, did it ever occur to you that we're going to have an algae bloom in the lake? And there was deer caught in the headlights there, because they had never, ever considered that. So I told them, yes, the lake level should be a high priority. Getting back to what somebody said back there about the drainage of the Great Lakes. As of this morning, the lowest of the Great Lakes is Lake Ontario. It's lower, it's for sea level, I should say. It is down 12.7 inches since last month. This is supposedly on a 7-11 year cycle, and the lakes are receding. 11.7, Lake Erie is down 8 inches. Lake Huron and Lake Michigan, they consider to be one lake, is down approximately 6 inches. And Lake Superior is down approximately 3 to 4 inches. This has nothing to do with opening up the locks or anything else. There's people I've spoke to at these conferences. They're a lot smarter than I am, only because they have a lot of letters that's passed their names, so I have to understand that they are authorities on this subject. And they are saying that this was going to happen. It is happening. The problem is, it does not solve your issue right now. The lake levels will be going down. My comment to the IJC was they were not worried about the high lake levels or the very low lake levels that we have experienced before. My comment to them was, really, why don't we stop worrying about high lake levels and low lake levels and start to worry about a moderate lake level and you controlling the amount of water? That was kind of a novel idea to them. I don't understand why, but it's just a common sense type of thing. So you need to be aware of everything that is happening. This has nothing to do with high lake levels. The high water is, this is just a consequence. The problem is the sand. Michelle and Lou and the city treasurer and I got a hold of the Undersecretary of the Army, and he approved it right away. I mean, immediately for us to go to the change of command ceremony in Cincinnati. I'll be quite honest with you, that was quite a high honor for us to be even involved with this. Our new general is, for the Great Lakes and Ohio River region, is General Robert Whittle. We started out the ceremony as a 1-star general. He then became a 2-star general, and then they did the change of guard ceremonies. It was quite something. We were the only civilians there. I'll be honest with you, everybody was Department of Defense, and it was all military in their full regalia. And everybody there was quite touched that we took time out of our busy schedules to show support for the change of command and to show up. As Michelle told me right after the ceremony, when we had the receiving line, she said, you know, if General Whittle does not remember who the people of New Buffalo is, she said, I guarantee his wife will. It was very touching for them and their family. At the end of that, Michelle was in deep conversation with a retired colonel and his wife, and I thought, well, why not go and talk to somebody? So I went and I talked to Lieutenant General Sumner. He's a 3-star general. He is the general that is in charge of the Army Corps for the United States of America, for the world. I explained to him our problem with Breakwall. As Lieutenant Colonel Turner, who is the Detroit commander, went walking by with his wife in tow, headed probably to get some kibbles and bits, the poor general reached out and grabbed him and he says, Greg, this thing in New Buffalo, tell me you're all over this. Oh, yes, General, we're on top of it. Oh, yes, General, I've been there 4 times. He said, okay. He said, what do you think the problem is? What do you think the problem is? Well, you know, as General, he says, you know, we did get the Section 111 money to do a study, he says, but you know, it's going to take us a couple of years. General said, no, Greg. He said, and I couldn't believe this. Michelle was standing right there as I'm talking to him. He said, I want this as a high priority. I want this taken care of immediately. You will not take 2 years, you get on this right away. Yes, General, yes, I'll get on it. He said, do I need to come down there and see this? But no, I've got this, General, I've got it. Don't worry about it, we're fine. He says, what is the problem? He says, this was engineered when in the 60s? Yes, General, it was, he said. The General Semonite says, well, we've had 50 more years of better engineering. He said, he says, Greg, do you think the issue is what we need to do is just tear out the damn break wall? No, we can't do that, General. It's a federal recreational harbor, blah, blah, blah. He said, well, what do you think the problem is? Well, it appears to me, General, that the break wall is maybe configured wrong. The General said, great. He said, I'll just send a battalion down there and we'll just tear the damn thing down and we'll rebuild it. Let's get this thing done. He goes, well, I'll get the study and we'll be right on this and not a problem. Then the General said, well, if that can't be done, tear it down. He said, what about putting in a sand bypass plant? Now this General has never seen this. He has no idea, just going off of me giving me his business card and talking to him. And he's already brainstorming on how to get this thing done. So we are in a spot right now we've never been before. We really haven't. And everything is due to everybody's efforts. Everybody. And all we ask for is support. Now, I don't know how that is that support of calling your congressman and calling your state representatives Don't call me, I'm already on it, okay? But you still call me if you want to. But the Shoreline Alliance is doing their damnedest to get all of this taken care of and fixed. When I met with the General Semonite, I said, General, I said, when General Toy came out, and we had our meeting, and Ted was there, and Michelle, and everybody was there. And I said, see that line out there? We were standing up high on the bluff over there by John Daly's house in Grand Beach. I said, see that line out there? I said, it's about 20, 30 yards out. He said, yeah. I said, that's the beach. It's just underwater. That's the sandbar. I said, common sense. Why can't we just take a dredge and go up and down the beach where those sandbars are and pump the sand back? Lieutenant General Semonite said, why not? I said, well, sir, you know, there's a little thing in the state of Michigan called the DEQ. And the DNR, I said, now that the sand is out there, the fish are mating on top of the sand, and we can't touch the fish and where they mate and everything else. And the look on his face was, he didn't say it before shit, you know, but the look on his face was like, really? So he said he was gonna handle the DEQ. So I told him it's not DEQ anymore, it's EAGLE, and I don't even know what that stands for anymore, but it's environmental or something, but it still comes right back to the DEQ. A lot of this work that we have already done, it continues every day behind the scenes, where a lot of you have no idea or no clue this is happening. And it's all the Shoreline people, and it's myself and Michelle and Lou from the city. And now we've got State Representative Paquette, and we have Senator Lasada totally involved on the state side. So hopefully they can put pressure on EAGLE, DEQ, DNR, whatever you want to call it. So this is something. On October 3rd, I have another meeting at the White House for county commissioners. I have since called the Undersecretary of the Army, Ryan Fisher, who helped us to begin with and get this whole process started. And I'm meeting with him also, and I believe General Semonite is going to be there also, so hopefully we can get some updates for you on that. But it's all about contacts, and it's all about knowing the right people and talking to the right people and getting it done. And I do believe that you people really need to realize that the more united we are, the stronger we are, and the more we're going to get done. I got a lady that called me from Ludington. I'm not even in her district. I mean, I got New Buffalo, you know, to Browntown Road. And her house, she wants to know what to do because her house is within 5 feet of falling in. And so I had to have a long talk with her county commissioner, and I believe that county commissioner is now going to go to Washington, and I'll help him with all his contacts that I've had. So hopefully he can get something done for them. But thank you.
Thank you for your attention. Have a good weekend. Stay safe.